3 years after my transmigration, I finally received a notification from the system. It told me to win over the male lead. I looked at my husband lying beside me and fell into deep thought. This was the male lead? Task 1, successfully converse with the male lead. I stared at the panel for a moment, then reached out and pinched my husband. My hand was quickly caught by his, pulled to his lips, and kissed. Dear, don't mess around. Let me finish this report, then I'll play with you. Ding dong, task complete. Reward, $100,000. I had transmigrated 3 years ago. Alone in this completely unfamiliar world, I had been lost, hesitant, and in pain. Fortunately, I made it through. I built my own career and met Ethan Song. 2 years. That's how long we've known each other. We started off clashing at every turn, but slowly we learned to adapt. Step by step, we found our way to each other. There were misunderstandings, sure, but a month ago, Ethan and I exchanged vows and built a little home of our own. Maybe staying in this world wasn't such a bad thing after all. Just as I was thinking this, ding dong, a sound suddenly rang in my head. Who's there? I sat up and looked around. Ethan was sitting on the other side of the bed writing a report for tomorrow's lab work. The faint glow from his computer screen illuminated the sharp lines of his profile. He wore frameless glasses, his expression focused. He didn't seem to have heard the strange sound. Then, an electronic voice with static crackled in my mind. Hello, my host. You have just transmigrated into a novel world. Please don't be nervous or panicked. I am the system bound to you. From now on, I will assist you in completing tasks. System? My eyes widened. Just transmigrated? I've been here for 3 years. This system is 3 years late. I immediately retorted in my mind, I've been here for 3 years. You're way too late. And this world is a novel? But the system seemed unable to hear me. It continued on its own. Next, I will send you the basic information of this world. Please look through it carefully. Wait, how can you... Whoosh. A book suddenly appeared in my mind. Pages flipped rapidly, revealing its contents. This novel world is titled Cold-Hearted Professor Song, Please Love Me. Male lead, Ethan Song. Female lead, Wendy Wynn. Ethan Song? I stared at the male lead's name, eyes wide. The man I've dated for 2 years and been married to for 1 month was the male lead of this world? And Wendy Wynn, that name was familiar too. She was the intern who had broken a test tube in Ethan's lab and been scolded by him. In the original novel, they were supposed to be together. No wonder, no matter where Ethan and I went, we'd always run into her. Then who am I? I quickly scrolled down and finally saw my name on the last line. Extra. Claire Yu. Extra. Just a background character. NPC. The system spoke. Your mission is successfully win over the male lead. Thank you. Already won him over. We already have a marriage certificate. But the system still didn't hear me. It continued. The first task. Successfully converse with the male lead. Take note. Male lead Ethan Song has been cold and distant since childhood, rejecting everyone. It's extremely difficult for strangers to talk to him. Difficulty 3 stars. Good luck, host. I looked at the task panel in my mind. Ethan's personality was indeed quite cold. When we first met, you couldn't even get 3 sentences out of him. He had a strange temper and was icy, but that was in the past. Now, after my continuous taming, Ethan's personality had softened a lot. He'd become warm, like a little sun. I didn't know if this task was real or not. I thought for a moment, then reached out and pinched Ethan beside me. The next second, my hand was caught by his, pulled to his lips, and kissed. His voice was gentle, full of affection. Dear, don't mess around. Let me finish this report, then I'll play with you. As soon as he finished speaking, ding dong. Congratulations, host. Task complete. Reward, $100,000. That's it? Done? I quickly took out my phone and opened my bank account. Sure enough, an extra $100,000 had appeared. This system is real. If I keep completing the tasks, I'll be rich. I covered my mouth and burst out laughing. Ethan was startled. He quickly put down his computer and cupped my face. "Dear, what's wrong? Are you angry because I was too focused on writing the report? I'm sorry, I'll stop. I won't write anymore." I waved my hand dismissively. No, you continue your work, don't mind me. But Ethan still looked worried. "No, we just got married a month ago. We're still on our honeymoon. I shouldn't neglect you. Dear, let's kiss." He gently lifted my chin and leaned in. Just as his lips were about to touch mine, the system's voice rang in my head again. Second task coming up. I quickly pushed him away and focused. Task 2. Make the male lead smile. Take note. After suffering a major trauma, Ethan lost the ability to smile. He hasn't smiled in 5 years. If you can make him smile, it means you are special in his heart. Difficulty, 4 stars. Good luck, host. Smile? That's it? I turned to look at Ethan. He was sulking because I'd pushed him away, looking like an abandoned puppy. His downturned eyes were full of hurt, pitiful. "Dear, what did I do wrong? Tell me and I'll change, okay?" He leaned in, trying to push me down onto the bed. I placed my foot on his chest to stop him. Ethan smiled for me. "Dear, are you feeling unwell?" He looked at me with concern and reached out to touch my forehead. I never said things like this normally. He was a research professor. Though his major was chemistry, he had studied pathology. Feeling my forehead, he said, "It doesn't seem like you have a fever." I reached out and pinched his cheeks, pulling them up. "Smile." Ethan didn't understand, but he still raised the corners of his mouth and cooperatively gave me a smile. Ding dong! Congratulations, host. Task complete. Reward: $200,000. Another success. I quickly let go of Ethan and took out my phone to check the balance. I was both excited and regretful. This system came way too late. If it had appeared 3 years earlier, starting my business wouldn't have been so hard. Dear. Ethan rubbed my cheeks and called out twice. When he got no response, he looked deeply hurt. "Dear, stop looking at your phone. Look at me." I glanced at him briefly, very perfunctorily, then turned my attention back to my phone, waiting for the next task to release. Ethan glared at my phone, looking a bit defiant. He lowered his head and kissed my forehead, trailing down to my neck. "Dear, time to sleep. You go ahead. I'm not tired yet." Sleep? No way. Making money was the priority now. I wanted to get back everything I'd lost in the past 3 years. Not that kind of sleep. This kind. He took my right foot and placed it inside his clothes, where I felt the evidence of his arousal. My heart raced. Looking into Ethan's deep, dark eyes, my mouth went dry. "Aren't you? You still writing your report?" My dear isn't looking at me. "Why write?" He pouted. He picked me up, held me in his arms, and kissed me deeply. Soon I melted in his embrace. In my days, I suddenly remembered the system's original description of the male lead, Ethan's song, cold personality. Indifferent to love and desire, especially distant toward women. Some even rumored he was impotent. Even after getting together with the female lead, there was no change. And yet, here I was, being kept up until the middle of the night by him. I wanted to sleep, but Ethan wouldn't stop. Dear, last time, this time for real. He had already said that more than once today. The next morning, Ethan had already left for the lab. Breakfast was warmed up in the kitchen. After eating, I headed straight to my company for a meeting. This company of less than 100 people was my dream, built over 3 years of struggle after transmigrating. It was now on track. Not a big company, but promising. After finishing my work and meetings, I waited until the afternoon. The system, which had been quiet most of the day, finally appeared. New task: successfully attract the male lead's attention. Note: the male lead and female lead have a natural attraction to each other. At this moment, Ethan and Wendy are on a date at a university campus. Please go there and try to attract the male lead's attention. Difficulty: 3 stars. Good luck, host. Seeing this task, I raised my eyebrows. Ethan was on a date with Wendy? He was supposed to be in the lab today, doing his report. What was he doing at A University? Regardless, to complete the task and get the reward, I quickly packed up and drove to A University. As soon as I entered the campus, I saw two figures standing by the roadside a few meters away. It was midsummer. Green trees, blue sky, dappled shadows. Two strikingly attractive individuals stood facing each other, forming a beautiful scene. Many passing students turned to look. From a distance, they really did look like novel protagonists. But even from here, I could see Ethan's cold expression. His lips were pressed tight, a clear sign of impatience. Beside him, Wendy was smiling brightly, saying something, but it didn't spark any interest in him. Then Wendy glanced at a protruding stone on the ground. It wasn't in her path, but she deliberately stepped aside and, predictably, lost her balance, falling toward Ethan. Oh no! Just as she was about to fall into his arms, Ethan's expression remained undisturbed. He didn't reach out. Instead, he swiftly stepped back. Thud. Wendy brushed against the sleeve of his clothes and fell to the ground. She seemed stunned that he hadn't caught her and had even stepped back to dodge. After a few seconds of processing, she smiled awkwardly. "Sorry, I lost my balance. Could you give me a hand?" "No." Ethan had just opened his mouth to refuse when Wendy suddenly grabbed his wrist, trying to pull herself up. The moment her skin touched his wrist, Ethan's face turned dark and stormy, as if it might freeze someone solid. His gaze was murderous. This scene matched the original novel's description perfectly. Afraid he might actually do something unpleasant, I quickly called out, "Ethan!" Ethan turned around. When he saw me, his expression shifted from surprise to hurt, then to grievance. The ice in his eyes vanished completely. He harshly shook off Wendy and walked quickly toward me, simultaneously raising the hand Wendy had touched with disgust. "Dear, I'm dirty. You won't abandon me, will you?" Ethan did have mysophobia, but not with me. When we first met, whenever someone touched him, he'd act like either they would die or he would. It took me a long time to improve that. Wendy's touch had clearly triggered a relapse. I handed him a pack of wet wipes. "Weren't you supposed to be in the lab today? Why are you here?" Ethan quickly explained. "The lab has a collaboration with the university. After I submitted my report, the dean asked me to come for a handover. I thought it would be quick, so I didn't tell you." He wiped his hand, then took mine and pressed it to his cheek. "Dear, don't misunderstand. I didn't know she'd be here. Otherwise, I would never have come." Ethan didn't like Wendy. When she was an intern at his lab, she often messed up experimental steps, causing failures, and had also caused several misunderstandings between us. Now I realized that was all due to the original novel's plot. Meanwhile, Wendy had walked over. She looked surprised to see Ethan holding my hand intimately, his eyes full of tenderness. It was a completely different person from the cold man who had just watched her fall untouched. Wendy had never imagined Ethan could have such a gentle side. A flash of jealousy crossed her eyes. Then she turned to me. "Claire, we meet again. Do you remember me? I used to be an intern in Professor Song's lab." I nodded slightly. "I remember. Vividly. I'm currently a lecturer at a university," Wendy said. "I didn't expect to run into Professor Song here today. I was just about to show him around campus." Upon hearing this, I turned to Ethan. "You want to tour the campus?" Ethan immediately shook his head. No. He had wanted to leave as soon as he finished his business, but Wendy had chased after him and insisted on giving him a tour. If he had time for a tour, he'd rather go home and cuddle with his dearest wife. Wendy's expression stiffened. She hadn't expected him to be so blunt. She also noticed that Ethan's attitude toward his wife was completely different from his attitude toward anyone else. She couldn't help thinking, if only that gentleness could be directed at me. I took Ethan's hand and led him away from a university. As soon as we got home, the task completion chime rang in my head. I took out my phone to check the reward. Ethan was washing his hands in the bathroom. His left hand had already been scrubbed red, but he wouldn't stop. I walked over and gently took his hand. Stop scrubbing. It's very clean. Any more and you'll scrub off your skin. Ethan suddenly wrapped his arms around my waist, lifted me onto the bathroom counter, leaned down, rested his head on my shoulder, and kissed me gently. His mood was clearly low. I asked, "What's wrong?" His muffled voice came through. My hand was touched by someone insignificant today. "Dear, can you comfort me?" The comfort he wanted wasn't just verbal. I had fallen for this trick several times before. After this icy cold man melted, he became a master of sweet talk. I retorted, "Shouldn't I be the one who's upset about this?" Upon hearing this, Ethan lifted his head. His dark eyes reflected my image, as if stars were twinkling. He immediately changed his tune. "Then let me comfort you." 2 days later, Ethan and I went to visit his parents. Both were university professors who had just retired that year. They had found a scenic farmstead to enjoy their retirement. They had wonderful personalities. They were sunbathing in the yard when they saw me and immediately stood up to greet me. "Claire, what brings you here?" I smiled and took Mrs. Song's arm. "Mom, Dad, I came to see you. It's inconvenient to go shopping here, so I brought you some things." Behind me, Ethan carried bags and boxes of supplements and daily necessities, exactly what they needed most. "You're too kind. You shouldn't have," Mr. and Mrs. Song said as they helped bring the things inside. Then they pulled Ethan aside. "Ethan, you and Claire just got married. You should focus on building your relationship, living your own lives." "You don't need to visit us," Ethan replied. "Claire insisted on coming." "Did you make Claire angry?" Ethan thought of the past few nights losing control and felt a little guilty. "I don't think so." The night before, I had received the system's 4th task, earn the favor of the male lead's parents. For me, this was effortless. Before transmigrating, my parents had died young, so I grew up alone. After coming to this world, I met Ethan and gradually got to know his family. During that time, Ethan's parents had grown to treat me like their own daughter, and I had grown to see them as my own parents. Even without the system's task, I had planned to visit them. Now, it was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I picked up a rag, pretending to clean to show the system. After wiping for a while, Ethan came over and took the rag from me. "Dear, you direct. I'll clean." I gladly let go, sat down, peeled an orange, and ate while directing him. There, and the chairs. Wipe them all clean. When he finished, I put half the orange in his mouth. "My beloved Ethan, good job," he grinned. "Thank you, dear." Mrs. Song watched this scene with a warm smile. Ethan had been different from other children since he was young. He was cold, rarely smiled, and never got close to anyone, not even his parents. They used to worry, what would become of this child? But since he got together with me, they had clearly seen a change. He was no longer as cold. He slowly began to open up, like a frozen glacier slowly melting. He became more human. His marriage was something Mr. and Mrs. Song had never dared to imagine, let alone seeing him actively care for and joke with his wife. Mrs. Song's eyes grew moist. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm dreaming. This is all too good to be true. I only ever saw this in my dreams. If it weren't for Claire, I don't know what Ethan would have become." Mr. Song nodded. He called Ethan over. "Ethan, meeting Claire is your blessing. You must treat her well." Ethan nodded solemnly. "I will." That day, we stayed for dinner. As we left the farmstead, the system's voice rang in my head. "Ding dong. Congratulations, host. Task complete. Reward: $400,000. I couldn't help but smile. Ethan glanced at me while driving. "Dear, are you still angry?" I was confused. Angry? Why would I be angry? He hesitated, then said, "Last night, after you fell asleep, I couldn't help it. You were sleeping next to me." I glanced at him. He was looking at me with innocent eyes. His expression so vivid, completely disconnected from the iceberg male lead described by the system. I waved my hand casually. Oh, that. It's fine. I forgive you now. His eyes lit up immediately. Thank you, dear. So tonight, don't even think about it. Oh. The disappointment on his face was visible. A few days later, while I was resting at home, I received a new task. Fifth task, make the male lead accept a homemade lunch from the host. Note, the previous tasks have been completed excellently. It's time for a greater challenge. Ethan has severe misophobia and never eats food given by others. Giving him a homemade lunch is equivalent to confessing your love. There is a 99.99% chance of rejection. Even if rejected, don't be sad. Good luck, host. The system was determined that I would fail. True, I had never made Ethan a lunchbox before, but that didn't mean I couldn't. I was determined to get this reward. I immediately went into the kitchen. After an hour of cooking, I packed the food into a thermal container and set off. Ethan had always been interested in chemistry. After college, he pursued further studies and eventually joined a top national research institute. Visiting required layers of applications. In the past, I found it too troublesome to go often. Now, as Ethan's wife, it was much easier. The institute was quiet, shaded by trees, with an academic atmosphere everywhere. I walked down the hallway to Ethan's lab and saw Wendy standing outside, peeking in. She was also holding a thermal container. Why is she here again? Wendy, you're here too. Wendy turned to look at me. Her brow furrowed and her face showed visible resentment, even more pronounced than last time. What are you doing here? She questioned rudely. I smiled nonchalantly. I'm here to see my husband, of course. Hearing the word husband, Wendy's expression turned even uglier. Seeing me about to enter, she said coldly, "They're doing experiments inside. No outsiders allowed. Is that so?" I ignored her and knocked on the lab door. Knock, knock, knock. Ethan, who was working inside, turned his head. He probably thought it was Wendy knocking. His expression was dark, and his gaze was icy cold. But when he saw through the glass window that it was me, his eyes instantly softened. A small smile even appeared at the corner of his lips. He quickly put down his test tube and came to open the door. "Dear, why are you here?" His face was full of surprise since I rarely came here. I held up the thermal container. "I brought you lunch. You haven't eaten yet, have you?" Ethan shook his head, then looked at the container with shining eyes. "Did you make this for me with your own hands?" Behind him, Wendy saw the door open and tried to squeeze in, but Ethan subtly blocked her and closed the door, not letting her enter. So the no outsiders allowed rule was made for her alone. Through the glass, I saw Wendy's furious expression. Ethan hugged the lunchbox like a treasure and quickly pulled me away from the door, as if distancing himself from a germ. "Dear, you're so good to me. Have you eaten? Let's go to the break room and eat together." The break room was next to the lab, connected by a small door. When lab staff got tired, they could rest there. Ethan opened the lunchbox and couldn't stop exclaiming in delight, his eyes full of excitement and bliss. I pointed outside. "Why is Wendy here?" Ethan's eyes flashed with disgust. "She keeps coming to find me lately." The lab had a collaboration with A University, and unfortunately, A University had appointed Wendy as their representative. That meant she could legitimately enter the lab every day and run into Ethan. Sometimes she'd try to chat with him, sometimes she'd invite him to lunch. Today, she had even made him a homemade lunch. Ethan was fed up. He tried every way to avoid her, but strangely, Wendy always seemed to know exactly where he was. "You said she always manages to find you?" Ethan nodded. "Not only that, she seems to have investigated me. She knows my birthday, zodiac sign, blood type, even things that happened to me as a child. It's like she's crazy." Hearing this, I grew more and more uneasy. How could she know everything about Ethan's childhood in such detail? Even I, his wife, only knew some things from the system. Wait, could Wendy also have a system? If I, a background character, had a system, it would be perfectly normal for her, as the female lead, to have one too. Then her resentment toward me is because she thinks I stole her male lead? Ethan took my hand. Dear, I've already given orders that she's not allowed in the lab anymore. Later, I'll talk to the security guard to keep her out. I'm devoted to you. Please don't misunderstand. He was genuinely afraid I would leave him. I turned and kissed his cheek. I believe you. Now eat your food before it gets cold. After Ethan finished eating and started working, I left the lab with the empty container. Wendy was gone. I thought she had given up, but as soon as I reached the hallway, she blocked my way. She got straight to the point. Claire, I want you to divorce Ethan. I looked at her calmly. No hysteria, no rage. Why? Give me a reason. Wendy lifted her chin, her expression proud and self-righteous. Because Ethan and I are meant to be together. We're destined. What you're doing now is wrong. Who told you that? Does it matter who told me? It's the truth. It was meant to be. Seeing her confidence, I was even more certain of my guess. Was it? The system? Wendy's face drastically changed. She stared at me in shock. How do you know? Because I have one too. Upon hearing this, Wendy was even more stunned. She realized she wasn't the special chosen one. Then she gritted her teeth and demanded, "Since you have a system, then you should know. Ethan is the male lead of this world. I am the female lead. We should be together. You stole him from me." Wendy hadn't known this before. She had only felt envy and jealousy seeing Ethan's tenderness toward his wife, wanting it for herself. But a few days ago, a system suddenly appeared in her mind and told her everything. Wendy then realized that Ethan's gentleness and love were supposed to be hers. Someone had stolen them from her. If I divorce Ethan, she could regain that gentleness and love. You thief! You stole Ethan's love and hogged his gentleness. All of this was supposed to be mine. Hearing this, I laughed. Has it occurred to you that Ethan's current gentleness and thoughtfulness were guided and improved by me, bit by bit? It has nothing to do with you. I've read the original novel. Even after Ethan and Wendy got together, he remained an iceberg. There was no change. He even became more extreme and stubborn. The Ethan of now has nothing to do with the original novel. He is a brand new, independent person. But Wendy wouldn't accept it. Impossible! He is my male lead. I am his salvation. Give him back to me. She charged at me in a rage, trying to grab me. But I quickly stepped aside. Wendy, I haven't stolen anything from you. Ethan and I were already married before the system even appeared. Even if I left him now, he wouldn't choose you. Impossible. Impossible. She couldn't hear anything anymore. I shook my head and turned to leave. The system was just a tool. You couldn't blindly follow its instructions. Moreover, this was a real world. Everyone here was a living, breathing person. They couldn't be treated like characters on a page. A few days later, I received another message from Wendy. "Claire, you said Ethan wouldn't choose me. But what if he knew the whole truth? What if he knew that everything you did was just to complete your mission from the system? Would he still choose you?" Below the message was an address, a coffee shop. I thought for a moment, didn't reply, and went straight to the cafe. Wendy had arranged everything. I followed the waiter to a booth. As soon as I sat down, I heard Ethan's icy voice from the next booth. "This is the last time I'll see you. You said you had something to tell me about my wife? What is it? If you're lying to me, I won't let you off." His voice had no warmth at all, completely different from how he spoke to me. If I didn't know him so well, I might not have recognized it. Then Wendy's voice came. "Ethan, Claire is not your wife. I am. I am your destined wife. The person who should have married you is me." Ethan's voice grew even colder, laced with obvious anger. "I think you've lost your mind." He stood up to leave, but Wendy stopped him. "That woman doesn't deserve your kindness. There's a reason she's with you. The reason is, she loves me. No, Claire has a system. Did you know that?" Wendy blurted out the truth. "I only found out a few days ago. This is a novel world. We are all characters in a novel. You are the male lead and I am the female lead. These are all true. Evidence? Wendy pulled out a printed book. This is the original novel, printed from the system's data. It records the entire story. Ethan took the book and read it carefully, his brow furrowing deeper and deeper. Wendy continued, "Now you know. We are destined to be together. Claire stole you. She's a thief. Everything she did with you was just to complete system tasks. She did it for money." Hearing this, Ethan suddenly remembered the strange things from the past few days. The sudden, odd requests, touching, smiling, bringing lunch. None of these had happened before. Wendy noticed his reaction and pressed on. "You've noticed it too, haven't you?" "Shut up." Ethan's gaze grew even darker. His voice was so cold it seemed to freeze the air, barely contained rage simmering beneath. "Even if this world is a novel, even if you are the female lead, so what? The person I love is Claire. My wife is Claire. It's not you now, and it will never be you." "Ethan, that's wrong." Ethan ignored her and stood up to leave. But as he looked up, he suddenly saw me sitting in the next booth. Pain, sadness, hesitation, and panic flickered across his face, all eventually turning into grievance. "Dear," he called softly, his voice almost breaking into sobs. He walked over, opened his arms, and held me tight. "She told me lies. I don't believe that my dearest wife would marry me just for some system rewards. I had heard everything they said. Ethan, what she said is true. This is indeed a novel world. You are the male lead." Before I could finish, his arms tightened around me. Feeling his anxiety, I gently patted his back. "However, I came here 3 years ago. I only got the system half a month ago and learned the truth. Before that, I had no ulterior motives. Ethan, I like you, so I'm with you. I love you, so I married you. It has nothing to do with the system, nothing to do with this world, nothing to do with whether you're the male lead." After I finished speaking, his arms only tightened further, as if trying to press me into his chest. "Ethan, did you hear what I said?" I heard it. His voice was choked with emotion. I felt my shoulder grow slightly damp. Then he lifted me up, holding me high. "Dear, I'm so happy. I love you so much." His eyes sparkled with tears, but his face was radiant with a happy smile. He spun me around several times before finally stopping. Then he asked curiously, "Dear, was bringing me lunch a system task?" I admitted frankly, "Yes. Every completed task comes with cash rewards. Why wouldn't I take them?" Ethan thought for a moment, then nodded firmly. "Makes sense. Dear, what other tasks does the system have? Let's get all the rewards together. Then we can use the money for our honeymoon. That idea. I like it." Wendy stood nearby, her face pale. "You two. You won't have a happy ending. You're not supposed to be together." I turned to look at her. "Is that so? We'll find out in the future. After all, our destiny is in our own hands." I took Ethan's hand, fingers intertwined, and walked away without looking back. As soon as we left the coffee shop, Ethan couldn't help asking, "Dear, since this is a novel world, what was your role in the original novel?" I rolled my eyes. A nobody. An extra. Just a background character. But Ethan's eyes lit up. "Dear, you came here alone, without the system's help, without any advantages, in an unfamiliar place, and built your own company in 3 years. You created your own life. You're amazing." I was momentarily stunned. To be honest, when I first learned from the system that I was just a background character, I felt a bit upset. But hearing Ethan's words now, I suddenly felt enlightened. "You're right. I am amazing. Who says a background character can't rise up?" "Exactly." Ethan nodded, then kissed my hand. "Dear, I finished my lab work. Let's go on our honeymoon tomorrow. To your favorite island. We have half a month to enjoy." "Sounds good. My company affairs are almost settled too." Ethan suddenly lifted me up in his arms, lowered his head, and pressed his forehead gently against mine. "My dearest Claire, Meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. I love you. The end. Subscribe for more drama. Up next, I targeted the wrong guy.